Hello. It's great to see you all again. I know a lot of you think the age of dinosaurs was when animals reached the absolute limit of size. Those giant long-necked herbivores from the Jurassic and Cretaceous, whose footsteps literally shook the ground, seem like the ultimate proof of that. But here's the thing. The age of giants never actually ended. Believe it or not, we're living right in the middle of it. At this very moment, somewhere in Earth's oceans, there's a creature so enormous that it makes every dinosaur that ever lived look small. A creature longer than 3 full-size coach buses lined up end to end, weighing about as much as a Boeing 747. Its heart is the size of a car, and its largest blood vessel is wide enough for a baby to crawl through. Heck, even its penis is longer than any human who's ever lived. It isn't just the biggest animal alive today. It's the largest creature to have ever evolved in the entire history of life on Earth. And yes, it's completely real. It's the blue whale. Yeah, I know. You've probably heard those facts 100 times already. But here's something you may not know. Scientists estimate that fewer than 1% of people on Earth will ever see a blue whale in the wild. So trust me, very few people watching this video can truly picture just how unbelievably massive one really is. The International Whaling Commission has documented 88 blue whales measuring over 30 meters long, with one individual reaching an astonishing 33 meters. Stand that whale upright, and it'd be about as tall as a 10-story building. The heaviest blue whale ever recorded weighed 190 tons, and researchers believe they can actually exceed 200 tons. Imagine putting an entire high school on a scale. Let's say it has 1.500 students, each weighing around 62 kilograms. You'd still need another whole high school on the other side just to balance the scale against one blue whale. Okay, comparing it to humans is almost cheating, isn't it? A blue whale weighs more than twice as much as the largest dinosaur ever known. And even compared to every other whale species, it's still nearly twice as heavy. The blue whale has reached a level of gigantism that's almost absurd, leaving behind the billions of species that have existed throughout 3.5 billion years of evolution. And somehow, it's still here. While we search for the answer to why such an outrageously oversized creature exists, and not only exists, but thrives, we stumble across a surprising discovery. As it turns out, blue whales need to be enormous. In fact, the bigger they are, the better. Waves begin with the wind. And the story of the largest creature to have ever lived begins 50 million years ago, in what is now Pakistan. If you were lucky enough to be there, you might come across an animal called Pakicetus. Its name literally means the whale from Pakistan. Hold on, you're seriously telling me this 4-legged animal, about the size of a wolf, is related to the blue whale? Not just related. Pakicetus is considered one of the earliest known ancestors of all modern whales. It doesn't look anything like today's whales on the outside, but inside, its unusually dense ear bones are a signature feature of the whale lineage, specially adapted for underwater hearing and navigation. Pakicetus represents one of the very first whales, a transitional form between life on land and life in the water. It lived along rivers, lakes, and shallow coastlines, hunting fish as well as land animals. Over the next 10 million years, descendants of Pakicetus, such as the walking whale Ambulocetus, Remingtonocetus, Myocetus, and Rhodocetus, became increasingly adapted to life in the water. Then, around 40 million years ago, whales had become fully marine animals, and they even came to dominate the oceans. Basilosaurus was one of the largest animals of the late Eocene, reaching up to 20 meters long and weighing as much as 15 tons. Despite being a true whale, its name means king lizard because early scientists mistakenly thought it was a gigantic marine reptile. A few million years later, something fascinating happened. The whale family tree split into 2 major branches. On one side were the toothed whales, fearsome hunters that use echolocation to track their prey. On the other were the baleen whales, which use soft yet incredibly tough baleen plates to filter food directly from seawater if toothed whales are like predators or a fisherman catching prey one at a time. Then baleen whales are more like someone casting a giant net, or an industrial fishing boat hauling in entire schools of fish in one sweep. Fast forward to about 10 million years ago, a new lineage of baleen whales appeared, the rorquals. Just like the name suggests, these whales have long folds of skin running from beneath the jaw all the way down to the belly, combined with an incredibly flexible lower jaw. Those pleats allow their mouths to open unbelievably wide, while their throats expand to an almost ridiculous size. This bizarre body design unlocked an entirely new ability the Earth's server had never seen before: lunge feeding. Basically, a rorqual accelerates straight into a dense swarm of prey, throws its jaws open like Pac-Man, and gulps down a volume of water nearly equal to its own body mass before filtering out the food with its baleen plates. Let's break this down for a second, because this newly unlocked skill is way more overpowered than it sounds. By charging forward and taking one massive gulp, rorquals can capture an enormous amount of prey in a single attack with incredible efficiency. A large whale can scoop up as much as 70,000 liters of seawater into its expandable mouth and trap nearly half a ton of krill and other tiny marine animals. In one single gulp, it consumes around 457,000 calories, roughly 200 times more energy than it spent performing the attack. To put that into perspective, one mouthful from a blue whale contains enough calories to keep you alive for about 6 months. In other words, rorquals had discovered the ultimate cheat code for becoming gigantic. It just took evolution a few million years to figure that out. Around 5 million years ago, rorquals began growing to enormous sizes. The strange part is that this wasn't an isolated event. Almost every modern species of rorqual, as well as many other baleen whales, underwent extreme gigantism during the period between about 4.5 and 3 million years ago. The blue whale joined the party a bit later, around 1.5 million years ago. So what triggered this explosion in size? The answer lies in another kind of explosion: an explosion of phytoplankton. Phytoplankton sit at the base of almost every marine food chain. Copepods and krill feed on phytoplankton. Schools of fish like sardines and anchovies feed on those copepods and krill. And from there, it's the classic story of big fish eating little fish. When massive schools of prey suddenly became common throughout the oceans starting around 5 million years ago, lunge feeding suddenly got a massive buff. All at once, whales found themselves in the perfect environment to grow as large as they possibly could. But what caused that sudden food boom in the first place? Well, around 5 million years ago, a combination of tectonic changes, global cooling, and stronger winds intensified a phenomenon known as coastal upwelling. When strong winds blow along a coastline, surface water is pushed in the direction of the wind. But thanks to the Coriolis effect, the Earth's rotation, that water is deflected away from the coast instead, as the surface water moves offshore. Cold, nutrient-rich water from the deep rises to replace it. That's upwelling. In a nutshell, phytoplankton use sunlight for photosynthesis, but they still need nutrients dissolved in the water. Upwelling acts like fertilizer, triggering massive phytoplankton blooms that create dense feeding grounds capable of supporting gigantic rorqual whales. So here's what happened. Rorquals evolved an entirely new feeding strategy. Then the oceans suddenly became the perfect place for that strategy to dominate. And almost overnight, in evolutionary terms, they all started getting huge. Remember the surprising fact I mentioned at the beginning, that whales actually need to be big? Yep. A team of researchers at Stanford University studied Antarctic whales and concluded that a whale has to reach at least about 4.5 meters in length, or roughly 1 to 2 tons in body mass, about the size of a recently weaned minke whale calf, before the food it captures through lunge feeding is enough to keep it alive. In other words, 4.5 meters and around 1.5 tons is basically the minimum size required for a rorqual to survive in the ocean. Back to the main story. Stronger upwelling and booming phytoplankton explain why rorquals became so enormous. But that still doesn't explain why the blue whale outweighs every other creature in evolutionary history. The answer lies in what our blue giant eats. Krill. All rorqual whales feed the same way: charge forward, then gulp. But their menus aren't the same. Some specialize in fish. Some feed mostly on krill and copepods. And some happily eat both. The blue whale, though, it seems to be almost completely devoted to one thing: krill. So what's so special about krill? This tiny creature, small enough to sit on your fingertip or in the palm of your hand, is one of the richest and highest quality sources of protein on the planet. Around 60 to 80% of a krill's dry weight is pure protein. They're also the most abundant animals on Earth by biomass. Scientists estimate there are roughly 400 million tons of krill in the Southern Ocean alone, and they gather into superswarms so vast and dense they're almost impossible to imagine. One observed swarm measured roughly 400 meters long, 200 meters wide, and 100 meters deep, enough to fill more than 2,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools, with densities reaching around 30,000 individuals per cubic meter of water. A swarm that size could weigh nearly 250,000 tons. During peak feeding season, a single blue whale can consume up to 16 tons of krill every day, about 12% of its own body weight. And they eat that much because they have to. Remember? Blue whales need to be enormous. The bigger, the better. Krill may be incredibly abundant, but only seasonally. Their populations explode in cold, nutrient-rich waters during the summer, then become scarce once winter arrives. That creates a feast or famine lifestyle. Eat as much as possible while food is plentiful, then survive the lean months by burning stored fat. From an evolutionary perspective, being huge offers a double advantage. A bigger body lets you eat more, and it lets you store more fat. In other words, for a blue whale, being the biggest isn't enough. It has to be bigger, then bigger still, and somehow, they may actually still be getting bigger. One study estimates that blue whales increase their body mass by about 7.600 times, from roughly 25 kilograms to 190 tons, in just 5 million generations. By comparison, a land mammal would need around 10 million generations to increase its size by only 5.000 times. One major reason is that water supports the body's weight, so whales require far fewer structural changes to evolve larger sizes. The same study also found that most mammals today are actually smaller than they were around the last ice age. Roughly 1 million years ago, blue whales are the exception. They've continued increasing in size, and in theory, they could grow even larger, as long as there's enough food. But there's a catch. You know the saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Well, blue whales are doing exactly that. Studies suggest Antarctic krill populations have declined by 70 to 80% since the 1970s, largely because of climate change and industrial krill harvesting for omega-3 production. If krill continues to disappear, blue whales could disappear with it. And that's not even their only threat. Industrial whaling during the 20th century wiped out 99% of the Antarctic blue whale population. Their numbers crashed from around 250,000 before commercial whaling to only about 2,000 by the mid-1960s. Since blue whale hunting was banned in 1966, their population has slowly begun to recover. But according to one projection, even decades from now, their numbers still won't reach half of what they were before commercial whaling. So, to wrap it all up, it took millions of years of evolution for the blue whale to become the largest and most successful giant ever to exist on Earth. But whether that incredible story continues or comes to an end depends, to a very large extent, on us.